It's Fucking a Rappin', a podcast with a purpose. I'm King Cooper here with Alex and Flizzo. What is Lockheed Martin doing for Pride Month? Stay tuned to find out. But first, I had to throw away a sock today. Feel like I lost my flock and the shepherd saying, hey, you protect me from my head down to my toe. Direct the path where I'm headed, I do not know. Bumpy road, toe hold, a rolling stone grows no mold. Protect the piggies, put on the cotton or wool for warmth. It's war for short. For long, it's Fucking a Rappin'. Okay, what do you think? Wrecking or rapping?
Rapping. I've never heard a sock rap before.
I
What's
forgot
the
he
sock hop?
opened with a rap. I thought he was just going to tell us a story about how he got rid of his sock. I was so like, what the heck's happening here?
Based on a true story, by the way.
I hate having to throw away socks.
Yeah, I need to change them more often, but now I have to buy new socks. First and foremost, we have to talk about the new Eminem song, Houdini. I've said it before, Eminem is a rap god and can do no wrong, end quote. Some standout verses are, well, let's start with the hook. Abra, abracadabra, I'm gonna reach in my bag, brah. He's playing dead, it gets stuck in your head, nothing but flow, yet what he said you do not know. Or did you know what he said?
I didn't know because I didn't listen to the song.
Well,
I've actually listened to it twice.
I listened to it enough times for you. Another line, and this is one we can dissect more, is lyrical technician, electrician, y'all light work. So technician and electrician rhyme, as does work with jerk, Chrysler, cipher, perk, and shirt from the previous lines. The punchline is a technician who does light work is called an electrician, with the double entendre of light work meaning easy to deal with.
Yeah, sounds about right.
What's that rhyme with Chrysler, though?
Well, if you got Chrysler cipher, well, there's mostly ER's sounds, and they're bending it a little bit. Have you ever heard him rhyme orange with banana? Orange-ana? All right.
Orange-ana banana?
Let's get some Shakespeare going. God had delivered a Shakespearean sonnet to my wife that I'm going to memorize. It's going to be sonnet 43. To give you a little summary or idea of what it's going to be about, there's just a lot of I see you in my dreams, basically. When most I wink, then do mine eyes best see, for all the day they view things unrespected. But when I sleep, in dreams they look on thee, and darkly bright are bright in dark directed. Then thou, whose shadows doth make bright, how would thy shadows form happy show to the clear day with thy much clearer light? When to unseeing eyes thy shade shines so, how would, I say, mine eyes be blessed made by looking on thee in the living day? When in dead night thy fair imperfect shade through heavy sleep on sightless eyes doth stay, all days are nights to see till I see thee, and nights bright days when dreams do show me thee.
I feel like if you read that to anyone that isn't connected to you, like your wife, you sound like a big creep.
Why is that?
Because you're
seeing somebody in your dreams. I think in that instance,
see you in my dreams.
Yeah, well, in that instance, it seems to me as though it's like a love that has been lost to life, and that's how he's seeing them. But I don't know. Alex thought the other one was creepy to memorize. Do you think this one's creepy too?
No,
I mean this one didn't seem as.
I'm just saying it's creepy if you recited that to someone who isn't your wife.
Well, if I recited
how often you're
to my
walking down the
unborn
streets
child,
and just reciting
I see her in my
Shakespeare to
dreams.
strangers.
That does happen, I guess. And when I first started memorizing Eminem rhymes, I did it while I would walk the dog. So that was when I was a real crazy person.
But I mean, like if you're walking down like Main Street and you like open a door and you're like, "Hark! What on your window break?" And people would be like, "What the heck is wrong with you?"
That's why if you do it to a hipster cafe, though, they'd break out in applause. We love you more. All right. So, yeah. In the past, I had mentioned Plato's cave, and today we're actually going to get into it. I said that it was basically the...
Pretty sure it is.
I said that Plato's cave was basically the Matrix. Today I'll read The Republic, which was written in Athens, 3rd century before Christ. And remember that centuries run backwards in BC, where we're in the 21st century, but the year is 2024. Plato lived from 427 until 348. And now I will share my screen of an image of Plato's cave so that you have a slight idea what we're going to be talking about before that. So you can see that what I'll point out is just shadows on the wall and a fire is producing them, and they're prisoners chained up so they can't see anything else. Now this is Socrates. Imagine human beings living in an underground cave-like dwelling. They've been there since childhood, fixed in the same place with their necks and legs fettered, able to see only in front of them because their bonds prevent them from turning their heads around. Light is provided by a fire burning far above and behind them. Also behind them, but on higher ground, there is a path stretching between them and the fire. Imagine that along this path a low wall has been built, like the screen in front of puppeteers, above which they show their puppets. Then the prisoners would in every way believe that the truth is nothing other than the shadows of those artifacts. This is the situation. The prisoners would have words they hear combined with shadows they see, and that would be their matrix.
So how would they know that that wasn't reality? Because that's all they know.
Isn't that the point?
The shadows in front of them.
Yeah, that is the question, or I guess the idea is because it's also that question is posed to us. How do we know that what we see is reality and not shadows?
And I guess the same question happens with, are we living in a simulation like the Matrix? If you just have a mask on with our reality playing through your eyes, and you hear whatever, but it's all virtual reality. Is that really reality, or is it something else?
Yes. And so Socrates then discusses what would happen when a prisoner escapes, that they'd be blinded by the light and stumbling around. They won't recognize the forms they see or know what they're called. Socrates goes on to describe the prisoner going back into the cave, and their body is now adjusted to the light, so they won't be as efficient as before, and the other prisoners would think them as a fool. And so here's the summary of that lesson. The eyes may be confused in two ways and from two causes, namely, when they've come from the light into the darkness and when they've come from the darkness into the light. Realizing that the same applies to the soul. When someone sees a soul disturbed and unable to see something, take into consideration whether it has come from a brighter life and is dimmed through not having yet become accustomed to the dark, or whether it has come from greater ignorance into the greater light and is dazzled by the increased brilliance. So saying that the light and dark transition also applies when going from the underbelly of society to high society and vice versa. The political and pop cultural events of our time are part of the cave. We grew up surrounded by it and don't realize it's a shadow on the wall.
I think people bring this point up when they talk about people that have been incarcerated for long periods of time. Mm-hmm. Especially somebody you get incarcerated when they're 18 and they get out when they're 50. All they know is life inside. So when they get out into the quote unquote real world, then sometimes it's really hard to adjust and adapt because there's just a whole different set of rules and circumstances, and everything is different. So sometimes they feel like they just need to go back to feel normal.
And in the situation of the cave, if they did go back, they wouldn't fit in again because the people that had never left will just be in a different place. But and then
I've also heard that with I can't recall the story right now, but it was somebody who grew up in almost like an uncontacted tribe, basically merged with the more modern world, but then they just did not like the way society treated everybody. The community, the friendships just weren't there, and they just felt lonely in a big city, essentially, just because of the way that they were brought up. There's definitely echoes of that throughout our society, where if you grew up a certain way and you kind of leave that area, when you get back, you get changed by your experience, and everybody in your original environment doesn't have that experience. So now when you come back, you're not the same, as them.
Yeah, and because I have that feeling with my hometown. I've left, and it's almost like I don't have a home anymore. I mean, I've created my own where I am now with the new family I'm creating. But if I go back to that place that I started in, it's almost like things feel smaller. I mean, even though it's like Philadelphia, a big city, but in my new location, I can't make a home in the same. It's like you can't make old friends. That expression.
Yeah, I go back frequently enough where it just you feel the difference. Like you wouldn't think there was that many differences just being an hour away, but there definitely is like a
Well, there's
culture
local
shift.
news and politics, then the stuff that fills in the weeks that you're not aware of. Like, oh, I didn't know so and so did such and such. But it's like, everybody in town knows that. Before we get to Alex's Rec of the Week, please take a moment to subscribe or follow the channel. Now, we're ready for Alex's Rec of the Week. Yes, that
So
was what
this
I was
week,
preparing for.
yes, thank you. Hopefully it wasn't too loud. The thing I have to complain about this week is, shockingly, the price of books. Like, I didn't buy a book recently. I bought an audio book. But that's
Oh,
really
don't
what
get me
threw me off
started
because
on
I was
Audible.
Well, that's yeah. Like it's like cool, you can buy an audiobook for $15. It's like, well, why don't I get a copy of the digital book as well? Because like that doesn't make any sense. Because what am I paying for? I'm not paying for anything. Even in both cases, I'm not paying for anything. I guess when you're paying for a hard copy or a soft copy of a book, you're getting something and like all of the things that go into it. But like when everything's digital, why is it cost the same, if not more, to get the digital entity than it does to get the physical thing? And Audible just doesn't make any sense to why it's so expensive.
They need to
And their whole
find a
system
different
of
way to make money.
well, yeah, I mean,
It's
paying
greed.
for somebody to read it, but an Audible system, you sign up for a monthly subscription, you get 1 credit per month, or you could buy 3 credits, or you could buy the book, blah. But also,
Well,
video games now being online only, you can buy the game, and you don't have the
I
physical
don't.
copy, and the publishers can remove the game from being listed, so you can't even play the thing you bought. So
Unless
you
it's a
really
real
have
hardcore
nothing.
indie game, I am not buying a game digital only. I prefer to have the tangible thing, mainly because mentally I don't know how much I really do it physically anymore. I still live in a world of like, oh, I finished this game. Here, do you want to borrow it? Like you can have this now. Like I can lend it to somebody. But like it's just I don't there's so much money, and then people's argument with that is why am I still like why is it still the same price digital as it is physical? I'm like you're not having to pay
Right.
the store. Other people aren't getting profit. Like it's all going to the main one company now if you're doing it all
Yeah,
digitally.
I understood that price was part of the overhead of producing that physical copy. But if you no longer have that physical copy, then why am I still paying that much money for that game? It
And
should.
quality is like gone down because now they can release an unfinished game and then just update it.
Yeah, they're like, oh yeah, we'll update it. Like
And
Like
no,
even
but
now
then
come
with
out with a
n-
finished game.
if the game doesn't
newer.
do well, they won't update it.
Oh, yeah, that's fair too.
Exactly.
I mean, that was the original what Destiny, where they were like, "Oh, this game will never die. We'll continue to put out updates, and Destiny will grow forever." And then, like 2 years in, they're like, "Destiny 2 is coming," and you're like, "Oh, cool! That thing you said wouldn't happen is happening." And then you had
Hey,
to buy a
same
whole
with
nother. And then,
Overwatch and Overwatch too.
yeah, I guess Overwatch
Yeah.
2.
So back to the books real quick. So Audible, I got that subscription when I first wanted an audiobook because actually tied into us moving out further from home. I had a longer commute to work, so I was like, oh, I'll get some books and I'll just listen to books while I drive to work. My first few books were all Star Wars books, and I actually thought the price was fair because the production was really good. I don't know if you ever listened to a Star Wars book on audio, but they put music in there. They got sound
Mm.
Oh, yeah.
effects. It sounds like you're listening to like the old radio
Oh,
broadcast where
yeah.
they do the voice things. But it's still one person reading the book, but it has more production to it. So I was like, oh man, this is pretty good.
Yeah,
Pretty good
it's
deal.
cool. My
And I
method is
started
always
I
getting
like
to
production.
just buy the longest books I can. Like War and Peace is 50 hours, so that way I get the most bang for my buck.
Well,
well,
so
then I
I
got like a
started with
regular book, and it was just some guy.
yeah. Well, that's the
All he's doing is
I did
reading.
Old Man in the Sea because I was like, I don't know if I'm going to get around to reading this. So I got it on Audible and I listened to it, and it is just an old man talking for 2.5 hours, and I'm
Did you
like he
finish
talks
it?
as two different people. Well, I sat there for 2 hours and listened to an old man talk, but he
Woo!
talks as two different people. I don't think he changes his voice.
The new Thrawn novels from Star
Uh,
Wars, they are fantastic,
Dude, if you're talking about
especially
production,
Audible.
back in the day when we used to go family road trips, I recorded Disney movies onto cassette, and like I would listen to The Lion King and listen to Hercules. Like I have like listened to these movies.
I I once watched Space Jam the movie while listening to Space Jam on the cassette, and you must have made that cassette because I had no idea where it came from.
Well, that's because like what else? Like in a road trip, all we had were like cassette players. So it's like, all right, I'll just record this onto cassette, and I could picture this movie I've seen a number of
Yeah.
times, so it wasn't hard. And so now, like the last time I was painting
That's one way
my
to do
living
it.
room, I put on like The Lion King, and I don't have to watch it because I like it all exists. I can just hear it and know it's happening. But then I
Yeah.
also,
All right.
in lieu of this episode, I listened to Flat World,
Oh, well, we're going to
and
talk
that
about
was
that in the second half. But first, Flizzo's This Week in History.
This week in history. 80 years ago, in 1944, was the largest amphibious invasion in the history of warfare. It was D-Day. This was the start of Operation Overlord. The Allied forces used over 5,000 ships and landing craft to move over 150,000 troops to land on 5 beaches in Normandy. Over 2 million troops from 12 countries gathered in Britain for that invasion. The Allied forces consisted primarily of American, British, and Canadian troops, but also included Australian, Belgian, Czech, Dutch, French, Greek, New Zealand, Norwegian, Rhodesian, and Polish naval, air, and ground support. Dwight D. Eisenhower, general at the time, had a letter he wrote to the troops on that day. Soldiers, sailors, and airmen of the Allied Expeditionary Force, you are about to embark upon the great crusade toward which we have striven these many months. The eyes of the world are upon you. The hope and prayers of liberty-loving people everywhere march with you. In company with our brave allies and brothers in arms on other fronts, you will bring about the destruction of the German war machine, the elimination of the Nazi tyranny over the oppressed peoples of Europe, and the security for ourselves in a free world. Your task will not be an easy one. Your enemy is well trained, well equipped, and battle hardened. He will fight savagely. But this is the year 1944. Much has happened since the Nazi triumph of 1940 and 41. The United Nations has inflicted upon the Germans great defeats in open battle, man to man. Our air offensive has seriously reduced their strength in the air and their capacity to wage war on the ground. Our home fronts have given us an overwhelming superiority in weapons and munitions of war and placed at our disposal great reserves of trained fighting men. The tide has turned. The free men of the world are marching together to victory. I have full confidence in your courage, devotion to duty, and skill in battle. We will accept nothing less than full victory. Good luck, and let us beseech the blessing of Almighty God upon this great and noble undertaking.
Yeah! Let's get those dirty savages!
Yeah,
I'm going to
speaking of
skin
savages.
some heads.
Well, yeah, it's a
The,
great undertaking that
Yeah, the only
helped win the war.
story I've heard about our granddad in the military was that he was in D-Day, that he started the day as a corporal and ended as a sergeant. And that's called a field promotion when so many people have died that they need to refill the ranks. Whether or not that's true, it doesn't matter. Now is when I need to remind people, don't let facts ruin a good story. So,
They
moving
do that,
on
don't
to
they?
my lion friends back here. They do have backings, but there we go. So these lions were a Father's Day gift from my wife, and I don't know when Father's Day is, but it's
like next
probably
Sunday,
soon.
I think.
June sounds about right. Flizzo wanted to put pets on a similar level as kids. What do you think about people celebrating Father's Day because they have a pet? Because I knew a girl who celebrated Mother's and Father's Day because she was a single mother to a dog.
That's a little ridiculous. So I wasn't putting them on the same level as kids. I'm saying other people view them.
Yeah. So
like
do you
that.
think it's okay for them to, I don't know, demand to be like that you say Happy Father's Day to me? I have a dog.
That is absolutely ridiculous.
Okay.
Not the same thing at all.
Well, then we can move on to
Anyone
Flatland.
who demands you say
I would
anything
say-
to them is ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean,
Acknowledge me for my thing.
yeah.
I demand that you say wrecking or rapping, but that is pretty ridiculous. So I don't know.
So
anyway,
like,
Flatland was published in
Okay.
England,
Wait, no.
1884.
Lizzo was going to say something.
Victorian
No?
society. Okay.
all right. So the dog parent thing. So I do think it's a good precursor for actual kids.
Yeah, I
Like
agree.
if you go from 0 to having dogs, you're taking care of something. You have to go out and, you're doing something for another living being. But to say you're equal to a kid, like to a parent with a kid, it's a bit of a stretch.
Yeah, I
you
would
both
say
have
that
dogs
if you're
before
saying
you had kids.
yeah,
Yeah.
but if you're saying that you're equal, you also don't have kids, so you just don't know
Right.
what that's like. I've said that life before kids is like the tutorial island, and it's not until you've had kids that you actually see what real life is like. That try and juggle this stuff, and you always have a thing demanding your time and attention. It makes it everything more difficult.
Yeah, there's plenty of times where you can like put a dog in like the background and they'll take care of themselves to a certain extent.
Well,
I
are
put
you
mine in,
saying
like,
you
a
can't
crate.
put a baby in a closet?
You put them in a crib.
Yeah.
That's like a crate, except it's got a roof. That's a hole in the roof.
Yeah. Baby
Yeah.
closets.
But if you want,
But
That's where it's
well, you
at.
don't have kids, so I guess it's okay that you think you can put a baby in a closet. Flatland is better remembered for conceptualizing what life would be like in a two-dimensional world. Women are straight lines and have to give out a peace cry when moving so that they don't impale someone. The main story surrounds A Square. A is his name, and his brother is B Square. They're literal squares, two-dimensional. With each successful generation, a shape adds sides, and circles are the rulers. Of course, they're not perfect circles, but have so many sides it's hard to distinguish each side.
So basically, a circle means that they've been around for a long time.
Yeah.
In that concept.
Well, yeah, it's a generational thing that
so
you get the
A Square
If a
has a daughter that's a the daughter is a line, so a son that's a pentagon.
yeah.
So how do you?
I think 2 or 3 kids.
Get new lines then?
All women
You have
are
a
lines.
kid. How do they procreate? Because
Yeah, if you say each generation adds a line, that means that
Well, not always because the working class and the soldiers are triangles with 2 equal sides and a very small third side. So they're like arrows almost. But like every now and then a soldier will have a
can
kid
cut
that has
through
an
you
extra
because they're
line
triangles.
that then ends up, if a soldier has a square or octagon pentagon child, that child is taken from them and given to a multi-side family to be raised as if it was their child, because soldiers are nothing but
so it's
soldiers and working class.
Which is probably a Victorian
It's based on genetic
thing.
mutation type deal.
Yeah, like
It's not.
Every
I guess
child
it's not
will
every
mutate.
kid is an extra line,
Okay, all right, I get it. I never
It just
read
happens.
this
and it
thing,
might
so-
be like
you're-
Ben had mentioned. I
You're
think it's
right.
the Flint effect, where IQ can be up to like 20 points higher in your kids than the parents. So it would be a situation like that where the kid is born and it's like, well, obviously this is hexagon material. We can't trust a triangle to raise this. A Square visits Lineland, which would be a one-dimensional world, and is persecuted when he tells those in the second dimension about them. This is like Plato's cave, going from the light to the dark, and now they think he's a fool. Here, I'd also like to talk about what I've said before on meta-analysis. They're going in between the first, second, third dimensions. I've said small, medium, large. What is right at one level is not necessarily right at others. I've watched a video series up to the 10th dimension that was interesting, and people like to say the fourth dimension is time.
It is.
Yeah,
It's that weird distance between like here and here, not like
These are all just
mathematical
shadows
time.
against a wall.
Well, no, dimensions
So
are a
are you
thing.
saying,
Like
like, how-
you can see that we have
Prove
like.
it. I see a two-dimensional figure. I don't know what you're talking
I guess you're
about
right.
here.
Well, no, because you can see. It's hard to tell if there's depth in this picture.
So have you ever seen that that diagram of a fourth dimensional shadow? What it would look like?
I don't
Isn't a
think so.
tesseract a fourth dimensional cube?
Yeah, I was going to say the tesseract.
No, the tesseract drawing is the shadow of a fourth dimensional cube. It's the shadow that it would cast if you could see that shadow. So it's kind of like, you ever draw like that cube with the lines? The tesseract is just what that would look like if it was fourth dimensional. So I guess that's kind of what they're going about. If you somehow went into the fourth dimension or fifth dimension or something like that and came back and let people know what was going on, they would think you're crazy.
Yeah.
Plus, how can you explain
because
to somebody what something is if they've never experienced that?
There aren't words for it in our world.
Yeah.
And similar, that's how it is in Flatland. They don't have three-dimensional words.
Except A does, which is really weird. I thought that was odd that like he's like saying these words. It's like, how do you have these words? Like, why do you know what the word for cube is, even if you don't know what a cube is?
There's a scene in Lord of the Rings where the dwarf has an axe and he says he's moving because he's got my axe on his nervous system. I was like, what does he know at nervous system? Does he have an anatomy textbook? The twist ending reveals a priest class that spends all their time repeating their scripture since there's no writing in Flatland. I tried to memorizing the Sermon on the Mount, and I think that's how sacred texts start, verbal history. I only got about 40-some lines into the Sermon on the Mount, but we'd been reading a lot of it on the pod.
Are we saying that was a twist ending? Like, I guess the real ending is he goes to jail.
And then
he's
like
persecuted because kind of, yeah. He is persecuted because he, after speaking with the third dimensional object, he goes to tell other people about it. And they're like, yeah, no, that we ain't having that. And so the priests throw him in jail.
Mm-hmm.
And then the book ends with like one chapter of him just explaining like, well, this is my life now. I'm trapped here because of trying to broadening my experiences. And
yeah, that's what happens in life. Yeah, try and help
never
people,
change.
they throw you in jail.
Stay where you are and just be the same.
No! Be the
No,
light
leave
the
your
world
hometown.
needs.
Don't go to the fourth dimension.
Yeah.
There's also a YouTube video of Flatland where it was the first all CGI movie made by one person. I believe that all the words and visuals are one-to-one for the book, so viewers
I'm
can
interested in that now.
check it out on their own.
But it's not from A's perspective then, right? Because it wouldn't just be dots the whole time. Like you just
Yeah, but it does. There are some scenes where it shows you what would it look like from their perspective.
I mean, there's a lot of
finally
the book is written that it's like, oh, if you put down a pen and then you see, and then if you it's a lot.
Yeah, it is a lot. You know, it's not a lot. 24. Today's numbers are 7, 1, 8, 9. So I think I have a solution.
What's your solution?
Would it just be to add the big numbers together? So like 9 plus 7 is 16, then plus 8 is 24, then times 1.
Times 1. Yeah, apparently that's it.
Yeah.
All right.
It's
Sounds
just
good.
basic.
Movie.
We're signing off now. Follow Alex on Google Maps, the link in the description. Check out my website, drawingmylifeaway.com. Thank you for listening. I hope you have a good day. Goodbye.
Adios.